Hello everyone, my name's Patty. Thanks for joining me today on this gorgeous day. I hope it's gorgeous where you're at. You know, I have been a foodie for most of my adult life, and that includes cooking, growing, learning about food. And one of the things that I've really come across in my travels with people is there just seems to be so much mystery surrounding some of the basics of cooking. I think some of that has to do with the fact that we've lost as a culture our just transgenerational abilities with regards to our grandmothers and grandfathers teaching us about food and cooking and all sorts of different things about life. And so today I wanted to start out with a very simple and basic and highly necessary component in cooking that involves cooking a whole chicken. Now here we have a whole chicken, and you'll find if you go to the grocery store that these are less than half the cost of a cut up chicken. So right there, that's your economic tip when it comes to healthy eating. You know, maybe I'll do a video in the future about how to cut this up, but for today we're cooking the whole chicken. One of the very fundamental things about cooking meat is what I have found to be is a basic brining recipe. So you can use a basic brining recipe for chicken, for pork. Those are the two main things that tend to be a little bit bland and chewy if you don't do something with brining. So your basic recipe is going to be 1 cup of salt to 1 gallon of water. So I have both of these here today. And now, I know that sounds like a lot of salt, but remember, this is going to be sitting in the water and you need enough water to cover it, so that flavor gets to go inside of the meat of the chicken. So with regards to this one chicken, it'll need about 3/4 of a gallon of water. So we said 1 cup of salt for 1 gallon of water, so that means 3/4 of a cup of salt for 3/4 of a gallon. So I'm going to put in half. This is not an exact science, so don't be afraid. And there's your 3/4 of salt. And I'm just going to cover this in water. You want all the meat to be covered. Sometimes I'll use a plate to keep the meat from floating so that everything is covered in the brining solution. Give this a little bit of a stir. Get some of that salt dissolved. So another part of the recipe is 15 minutes of brining time per pound of meat. So with this is probably a 5-pound chicken. I might let this go between an hour and a half. You can go up to 2 hours. Again, not an exact science, don't freak out. Whenever you're doing just regular pieces of meat that's just a fillet or a steak or something like that, and it's real small, you might only need 15 minutes or a half hour to do something like that. But remember, it's 1 cup of salt per 1 gallon of water, and you can divide that by however much water that you would need. So here we have our brine chicken. It's sat for between 1 and 2 hours, so about 1.5 hours. So we're going to transfer that. We're going to drain and transfer that into our crock pot. Now at this point, you don't need anything but the brine chicken. You could literally put this in the crock pot, cook it for the recommended time. It's going to turn out great. I like to add my own seasonings. This is some Himalayan salt. It's got extra minerals in it. So I'll add a little bit of that on top. We've got some fresh cracked pepper. And we've got some granulated garlic. A little bit of this goes a long way. And some ground sage. Now you can actually use fresh sage leaf, which I actually have. I just find that this covers the bird a little more nicely and gets that even flavor. So today I'm using a crock pot, and I'm going to take a second to talk about crock pots versus ovens. So for years we've been using ovens. There's all this mystery about how to cook a whole bird in the oven, and doesn't it get dried out? What are the problems with that? How do you roast it? How do you get crispy skin? And all those sorts of things. And I just want to take all the mystery out of it. So we're putting it in a crock pot. We are covering it. And we are not going to lift this lid cooking on high for 2.5 hours. Do not lift the lid. You lift the lid, it takes a while for a crock pot to get back up to heat on this. About 2.5 hours should be the minimum that you would need. You can go up to 3, but I would not let it go past 3 hours. So That is my recommended way to cook this. And what you have is that direct heat on the bottom of the bowl will be cooking all that dark meat around the edges, and the white meat will be getting almost like a steamed effect. So the final product is a much more palatable product. It just has the right texture. And this is just the way that I've preferred to cook a whole bird now. So in addition to that, when this is done, you can take it out at 2.5 hours and put it under a low broil to crisp up the skin a little bit, if that's how you like it. So I wanted to share this with you today. This is the basic beginning block to numbers of scores and scores of other recipes like soup and bone broth, shredded chicken. You can do so much if you just have this brining and cooking steps that we can build from. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you get a lot of use out of it, and I hope you come back to join me for my other videos. Thanks.